So in HR, we often train leaders on how to give feedback, but we rarely, I don't think I've ever heard of us giving training on how to receive feedback. So let's start filling in that gap right now. Hi there, I am Andrea Adams. This is the HR Hub, and on the show we talk about anything related to HR. Please subscribe to the show or to the podcast to keep learning from my guests. And today again, my guest is Pam Schmidt. Pam's an organization development specialist and a consultant. She thinks about things. She thinks about organization dynamics and is able to translate those thoughts into really interesting perspective on our organizations. And she's shared that perspective with me a number of times, and I'm glad to have her back. Hi, Pam. How are you?
Hey, Andrea. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Great. So we're going to talk about receiving feedback. I'll be totally honest. This is one I struggle with. So I think this is going to be good for me. Oh, whew, I just got to psych myself up for this. Just like I'd have to psych myself up if I was going in to receive feedback. Okay, so in preparation for this, I did look up a stat. So according to Gallup, 70% of people, so I'm not alone, are uncomfortable receiving feedback. And 37% avoid it altogether. That doesn't add up to 100. That adds up to more than 100. But anyways, we'll ignore that.
I don't think it's meant to.
Maybe not. Maybe it's different things. But anyways, why do you think we're all just so uncomfortable with feedback?
I think it's hard. I don't think we've really been exposed to getting feedback and getting it well. And I think that there are times when I think that there can be a close connection to conflict around feedback.
Oh, yes.
And so I think that we like conflict. We just don't really do it well. And so I think we've often probably been the recipient of somebody giving us feedback poorly.
Yeah.
And then the other aspect of if I've received it poorly, has it also been disconfirming for me in terms of how I might see myself?
Yeah, I want you to tell me a little bit more about that disconfirming thing right now. What does that mean when it's disconfirming?
So I have an idea of myself that I show up in a way that I can clearly articulate something. And then somebody comes and gives me feedback and says, I have no idea what you were saying there. It made absolutely no sense to me. And that can be really hard for a perception that I have of myself, or an idea I have of myself, when I get information that tells me the opposite, that says no, actually you didn't show up in a way that was clear.
Can I have, I've got an example already.
Yes.
So early on in my career, and we're all a little bit clueless, but I was told, I perceive myself to be a very sincere person, and sincere and caring. And the feedback I got was that I'm too direct. And that was very disconfirming feedback. And this idea that I'm direct has been something I've struggled with. I'm too direct, struggled with all my life. So there you go. There's an example of disconfirming feedback.
Yeah. And how was that like for you to hear that?
Shock. It was a shock. It was just a total shock. And then, and I wonder, I'll have to think about this afterwards. I mean, people, this is all happening real time. That was hard feedback that I'm still thinking about. I don't know, 20 something years later.
And how was it delivered?
I can't say. I've got a bad memory, so I can't really say I know, but I think it was off the cuff, kind of oh, you're too direct. I wasn't reporting to the leader of HR at the time, but it was delivered by the leader of HR. So, somebody above my
Power.
supervisor's head. And embarrassing, actually, that this is a discussion point
Right.
somehow above me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for those exact reasons, Andrea, is why we don't we struggle with receiving feedback, and we even struggle with asking for feedback because of how it can be delivered.
Well, and we don't want to be we don't want that disconfirming experience. You think we're doing good at something, and then, oh my God, blindsided by the fact that maybe we aren't doing as good in something as we thought we were.
Yeah.
Um, it's better, easier to be ignorant.
Well, and that's where I think the receiving part of feedback is so important, right? Because it's remembering that both when I give it or offer it, as well as when I receive it, it's often somebody's subjective experience.
Well, okay. It is their subjective experience of my directness. It totally reminds me of the quote from Brene Brown that I'm not going to quote it because I'm not going to get it word for word,
Paraphrase it.
but about um, there's a small group of people that you will accept feedback or criticism from, and you ignore the rest. We don't have a choice but to take feedback from our leaders. But when feedback is not invited, it is not welcome from somebody, like, how do you stop from internalizing it and, and feeling bad about it?
Mhm. I think if it's repeated feedback, then there might be something to explore for somebody,
Right.
right?
Right.
I think that that's important to also consider, like,
Yeah.
because my intention, is to be clear, and sometimes that can land hard, right?
Yes.
And so if I'm continually showing up in situations that are maybe sensitive, and while I think I'm just being clear, but it's landing hard for people, and if I get that feedback, then that is something in my mind that I think it's important to look at, because what I need to be able to do is to adjust my approach in situations, and to be able to moderate how it is that I'm showing up, because what becomes important um, is being able to show up in a way that allows me to be more effective.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
I'm showing up in a way that I think I'm just being clear, right? I can wear that as a bit of an armor.
Yeah.
Oh, like, that's your problem. I'm just being clear.
Yeah.
Um, but if there's an impact that I'm having, and it's a pattern, like, I'm not just having it on one person,
Yeah.
but that I'm having that impact further, and that I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting that feedback, then that is something for me to look at and consider.
Mm-hmm. Why is receiving feedback an important thing we should be thinking about, talking about?
Particularly, I think it's important with leaders, because um, as leaders move up higher in organizations, they get less and less feedback. People are more inclined to please them, right? I just, like, you have the ability to fire me or move me into projects that are cool or interesting or whatever. And so if you ask for my feedback, I'm probably more inclined, because of, again, the power differential, I'm more inclined to just tell you what it is that I think you want to hear. There's all these connections in terms of, how am I as a leader showing up,
Mm-hmm.
um, asking for feedback, and
Mm-hmm.
really digging for actual feedback, like some constructive or critical feedback. Like, if I was missing something, what would that be from your perspective? So how am I actually, like, digging for that or mining for it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then when somebody does give me some hard feedback, whether it's like about my leadership style or even about a decision that I've made, how I respond in that will set up whether somebody's going to give me feedback again that's honest or not.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think we should just at least touch base on the critical parts of feedback. Like, what are the critical ingredients in good feedback, whether you are the recipient or the giver of feedback?
So I think some of that is, like I said earlier, is just acknowledging that this is my subjective experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is just my perspective. And for me, a bit of a test is, if there's 10 people in the room and I'm the only one that's having this experience, it's probably mine. It's probably my experience with you. And maybe there's a conversation there or some self-reflection I need to do, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, Andrea, you're too direct. Is it like, that's probably something that is mine to actually look at,
Uh-huh.
and for us to maybe talk about in terms of our relationship. And so how do I approach feedback as more of a conversation where I'm also curious about you versus you've impacted me and I'm going to let you know that you've impacted me. And so, right, like, you're too direct there. I've told you the impact on me and now I get to walk away versus, hey, Andrea, can we have a conversation? There was this moment when you said this, and this was the impact that had on me. I'm wondering, can you tell me what was happening for you in that moment? And so how do I also bring some curiosity to feedback and think about feedback less as one way and more of it as a conversation? Like, how might we have a feedback conversation where I can offer a perspective or something that's impacted me, and be able to engage in a conversation. So it's not like the person that gave you that feedback, right? Where it's like you just drop a bomb and walk away.
One of my favorite books to recommend to clients is Radical Candor. Have you read it?
I have not,
You
but
have
I do
not.
know of it. Yeah.
And that she talks about caring, that you actually care about the person you're giving
Yes.
feedback to,
Yes.
so that you're not just a jerk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which,
There's
which,
something about positive intent, right? Like,
right.
that I'm approaching feedback with the intent of actually um, maintaining or even improving our relationship. And so how
Mm-hmm.
do I approach feedback from that perspective where I do show up with a positive intent that I am caring about you and your development and about us and our relationship?
Hmm. I think that's probably why 70% of people don't like it, because too often it's just, here's the feedback. This is not a dialogue. I'm going to go away, and in no sense of caring in there at all.
Well, and if you look at the models, right, like the SBI model, so what was this? What was the situation? What was the behavior? What was the impact?
Oh yeah.
It says nothing about a conversation. So all I'm telling you about is the impact that you've had on me, but I'm not asking then for like how, like, what
Oh.
was happening for you. Am I owning any part of it? What might my
Mhm.
part be in that? Like, if I have a trigger around people being direct because that was part of my family of origin,
Yeah.
and directness landed in a really hard way for me, and so I have a sensitivity to it. I have some Velcro for it, right? So when somebody's
Yeah.
direct, it's going to bring that up for me. So that's my part in it. And
Hmm.
is there still something that could be valuable or useful for you in that, or to have that conversation?
Hmm. Interesting. Okay, so that is still often there about giving feedback, and the flaws in so many of the feedback models is so true. Well, maybe that's what the sandwich model was getting at. Positive, I care. Hard feedback, um, and then positive, I care.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what that was about. But yeah,
I
instead
actually
of,
really like that, Andrea, because, like, I think that's,
maybe did I just come up with something original?
I think
Care,
so.
statement of caring, the feedback statement of caring.
Yeah, and then how is that, like, circular instead of linear, right? So then it becomes like, I care. Here's some feedback, and let's continue to care about each other and talk through this instead of just being, I just get to tell you about
your deficiencies and go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your deficiencies, how you impacted me in a negative way, that's hurt me, without looking at how I might have a part in that, or what my
That
part is
is
in that.
so true. Which I think that's another reason 70% of people are uncomfortable receiving feedback because yes, they know as an individual, I've played a role in that sometimes. But so often it is, we exist in a system, the leaders are part of that system, that have contributed to the behavior, and to just sort of go "Ugh," on somebody and then walk away it's not fair, it's not accurate.
Yeah.
So now we're really going to talk about the receiving feedback part. So when it comes to, preparing to receive feedback, what suggestions do you have for someone preparing?
So I'm gonna leave performance reviews out of this because I
Okay,
don't think there should ever be a surprise in a performance review.
that's true. Okay.
So I think
Okay.
that's a whole other separate can of worms, performance reviews. But if I've asked for, if I'm perhaps like new to role, you know, um, hopefully I'm working with my leader to be able to say, like, these are the areas that I want to focus on for improvement. They've given me maybe some ideas where they also want to see some growth and development. And then I'm checking in with them. I'm asking them for that feedback. But I think what becomes important is that, that I'm asked, like, there's something specific that I'm looking for. What is it that I could do better? And so even if I'm looking for that from my peers, it's like, hey, this is something, like, how do I share that with my peers? This is something I want to get better at. Can I, like, say it's presenting?
Yeah.
Can I run through a presentation with you and just get some feedback about how I did?
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to share that and then get that feedback. And for me, as the one who's being asked, so I'm giving feedback to somebody, how do I support them in what it is that they're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
versus, because this can also happen, versus me wanting them to show up in a way that I would show up.
Mm.
It's like, where am I also aware that if somebody's asking me for feedback, I'm not just telling them that they're doing it wrong because it's not the same way I would do it.
Yeah.
And so how do I help them develop and in a way that's authentic to them,
Mm-hmm.
and also helps to further their career and their development. Yeah. And so when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, can I give you some feedback?
Oh God.
Right? Because that
Breaks
can
the
happen.
jaw. Yeah,
You know,
totally does.
what do you need to do to prepare for that? Like, do you say, sure, maybe, like, let's have coffee tomorrow?
Yes.
It doesn't have to be in that moment, right? Even because
Yeah.
sometimes in an organization, if there isn't a culture of feedback,
Yeah.
even just somebody coming up and saying, hey, can I give you some feedback, can
Yeah.
create that, like, oh God, what is this about? And so it's like, I might even just need to take like an hour before meeting that person for feedback so that I can, like, calm myself. I can get self-regulated, right? Because it creates a bit of a threat response. So I might get a bit reactive. I might start
Uh-huh.
to feel defensive, or, um, you know, often defensive is the biggest one, right? Where somebody gives me feedback and then I list all the reasons why I did what I did to kind of justify it or explain it,
Yeah.
which also, if you're a leader, doesn't really set up somebody to continue to want to give me feedback. So how can I then, as the receiver of that, also try and get to a place where I can be curious?
My inclination is just to let it happen in the moment rather than wait, because then does it become a bigger deal if you if you wait, save it for later. And then and then it becomes a thing rather than a moment.
Like, absolutely. Uh, I need 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Can I come find you in 30 minutes? Or I have something else I have to go do.
But I want to give this my attention.
Yeah. And, and so that it gives you the opportunity, because you're not necessarily like, if you kick it down the road for a week, yes.
Yeah.
But if you're just saying like, I just need, like, really what you're doing is you're giving yourself some time to self-regulate.
Yeah.
Because when somebody offers or says that they have feedback for you, it can create that threat state for us, right? And are they going to give me some feedback that is disconfirming in some way, that they think I'm not competent, that I didn't do something right or well? And again, it's that, so how can I show up in that conversation in a way that has me out of that threat state as much as possible, and into a place where I can be more self-regulated, where I can really be able to listen to what it is that somebody is saying, and possibly be able to see my part in it, and also what their part in it might be.
Now, oftentimes receiving feedback, we don't trust the person giving the feedback. We don't trust their they don't have the credibility to be providing that feedback. They don't have the qualifications to be providing that feedback. They don't have the intentions we think they should have to be providing their feedback. And we are very tempted to just reject the feedback. I get that point around, if you've got it multiple times, you probably should be thinking about it. But what do you suggest when we're not sure we trust the sender?
I think it's such a great question, Andrea. And I don't think all feedback is valuable.
I think we need to be free to say so.
And so somebody can give me that feedback, and still, again, how I receive that is important. But it doesn't need to mean that I need to take it on or believe it or have it define me or haunt me. Because if they really have all those things that you just labeled, then and I'm not, and I check myself that I'm not just dismissing them because it's something I don't want to hear.
Right.
But, because sometimes even in something, there's like, I forget who talks about this, but like the 2% truth. Is there, I can dismiss and disregard 98% of what it is that they're telling me or giving me feedback about. But is there a 2%? Is there 2% that I can say, that might be useful? That might be useful. That could be something that I could think about. And so, dismiss the majority of it, or, depending on the person, as you said, like if they just don't have all of these things, I'd be curious about their intent in offering it, and maybe try and be curious about that in terms of receiving it. Like, I'm wondering, what made you want to offer this? To try and bring some curiosity in, to be able to maybe improve the relationship. Like, what have they done that has me not trusting them?
Right.
And because if I show up in a way that has me not receive that feedback well, that's probably going to increase the level of mistrust between us.
Yeah. I think that's so freeing, actually. It's that last bit that's freeing. You can receive it, but you don't have to believe it. And I like the 2% thing too. I'll reflect on that in a moment. So Pam, where can someone find you?
Probably LinkedIn is the easiest.
Okay. All right. I'll put a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes. Well, thanks, Pam. I love that, and I feel a little bit lighter for it, actually. And the part I'm thinking about was the part at the very end where basically we can receive the feedback, we can be curious about it, but we don't have to internalize it. We can just opt not to believe it. because there are factors. I also like using the word gracious in receiving feedback. So let's be gracious, people. Pam and I also talked about boundaries in HR, which I think relates to this probably. And the link to that is here. Thanks for watching out there. We'll see you next time.